Okay, friends, this is day 2 in our study of Matthew. And today what we're going to look at the second half of Genesis chapter 1. Yesterday we talked about this genealogy, or this origin of the person of Jesus, and how it's all rooted in this ancient story of the people of God, of what God had done through these generations and leading up to Jesus. And today what we're going to begin to discover is, who is it that Matthew believes that Jesus is? And I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview into chapter 2 also, because the end of chapter 1 into chapter 2 is stuff when Jesus is an infant or Jesus is a kid. He doesn't say anything. Once we get into chapter 3, we'll see him as an adult. But this is before he's even doing anything himself. And Matthew is already painting a picture for us of who this guy is, what he believes Jesus is here to do. So I want to paint you a picture of these 2 chapters as a whole, and then we'll come back to one particular story. So if you take the second half of chapter 1 into chapter 2, you get 5 stories, okay? What you'll notice is that each of the 5 stories has a quote from the Old Testament in it. So it's tying Jesus' story back in with what God has been doing all along. God has been planning this from the very beginning, and here we see these connections. You know, Jesus is not like Superman, where he just lands on the planet and has had nothing to do with the earth up until that point, right? That's not the story of Jesus. There is a comprehensive, a cohesive story that carries over from the Old Testament into the New, and these 5 chapters, 5 stories, they tie us back into that. So you'll see the end of chapter 1 about the birth of Jesus, which we'll talk about in a minute. Then you get a story about him being born in Bethlehem and the wise men visiting. That's the beginning of chapter 2. You then get into him going down into to Egypt, which is something we often forget about, or maybe never even knew. You then get a story of the evil King Herod killing babies. And then you get the baby Jesus, or child Jesus at this point, and his family going up into Nazareth. We'll talk about the last 4 stories tomorrow, but again, I want you to see these as cohesive, painting a picture for us at the very, very beginning of who this kid Jesus is. Okay. The second half of chapter 1. Who is this kid Jesus? Near the end of it, you get the Old Testament quote. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel. This is from Isaiah. When Isaiah is reflecting on where Israel has been and painting a picture through God's intervention in his life of where they're going, he says, we're just a hot mess. I mean, look, the nation of Israel, if you don't know the whole story, there's so much. I mean, just rises and falls, and just kind of, Isaiah's talking at a time when things are not good, and he says, but one day things will be good. And he paints a picture of a child being born, and Emmanuel means God with us. It's this picture of, through this child, God once again dwelling with his people and saving his people. And Matthew sees Jesus as that child. Now, the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way. Birth there, same verse, same word as in chapter 1, verse 1. Could be the origin, the Genesis, the birth. It's like the origin story of Jesus the Christ. It took place in this way. His mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph. Before they came together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Her husband Joseph, being a just man and unwilling to put her to shame, resolved to divorce her quietly. She becomes mysteriously pregnant. He is going to leave her, but he's going to do so in a way that, as much so as possible, saves her reputation. He considered these things. He didn't just, fly off the handle. He thought about these things. And as he's thinking about these things, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, don't fear to make Mary your wife, for that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She'll bear a son, and you'll name him Jesus, for he'll save his people from their sins. And remarkably, we could go down this rabbit trail for a while. Remarkably, Joseph gets on board. It says something about Joseph, right? It says call him Jesus. Jesus was a very, very common name at the time. It's the same as the Hebrew name Joshua. And it just means this. What would have been pronounced at the time is Yeshua, likely. It means Yahweh, which is the personal name for God. Yahweh or God saves. Okay, so his name is what Jesus means. It means God saves. So name him God saves. And all this took place to fulfill what the Lord has spoken by the prophet Isaiah that we talked about a minute ago. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel. Now, they don't name him Emmanuel, but it's one of the titles that he takes on. What does Emmanuel mean? Well, there's a parenthetical statement, which means God with us. Emmanuel means God with us. When Joseph awoke from his sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took her as his wife, but knew her not until she had conceived and borne a son, and called him Jesus. Joseph is of the house of David. So here he is adopting Jesus into the house of David. So this is how Jesus gets tied to the house of David. Adopting him in to the house of David. He becomes a son of great-great-grandson of this great king. And as I've said, he becomes the new David, the embodiment of this great king, come to set his people free. But how does he set them free? Well, look at his names. His names are Yahweh saves and Emmanuel, which is God with us. It is Yahweh saves by being with us. The people of God have felt that God has been absent from them for so long. For generations, they've been waiting for God to come back and to save them. If you read Exodus with us, if you didn't, then here's the picture. At the end, God's presence comes and dwells with them in a special way in this tent that they have built called the tabernacle. It's the kavod, is the Hebrew word. The glory of God dwells with them. Well, that presence has since left. That presence has gone, and there are a variety of reasons why here, but that presence is gone. Well, what is happening here? They have been waiting for the glory of God to return. And hear what Matthew sees, what he believes is that the glory of God is returning. And he's returning miraculously in the presence of this child. Yahweh, God, he has come to save by being close to us. So this is what's happening kind of historically, that God is returning. His presence is returning through Jesus. What does this say to us today? Well, in part, I think that it says this. There are so many times when we feel like God is distant, that God is far. Where is God's? Where's God's presence? Where is he? God feels absent. If we take this story seriously, then what we believe is that in Jesus, that in his presence, that God's presence can draw near to us. That what Jesus was for the people then, Jesus continues to be for us today. That he is the one who can save by drawing near to us. One of the things that I love about the way that the Bible, Matthew and others, present Jesus is that it is clearly not presented in a way that this is a fairy tale or some kind of myth. It's not happening, in a galaxy far, far away. It's happening in the real world. It's happening in real places that you can go and walk around today. I mean, I've been in the cave where it's believed that Jesus was born. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. I'll show you a picture of it tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, but on day 4, I'll show you a picture of it. In the cave, you can visit this place. I mean, the people that are around this are real historical people that we know about. This is presented not as a myth or a fantasy, as a fairy tale. It is presented as it is happening within our real world. And what I am left reflecting on when I think about these things and take them seriously is, do I think that this stuff is a fantasy? That it affects maybe me in the afterlife? But do I know that this affects my real life in the real world? And that's what I want to take seriously. And that's what I hope that you'll take seriously too, is what if this is real? It can make a real impact in your real life. I think that's a good thing to reflect on as you read this. Picture what is taking place within reality. And picture, if it does, is it possible that what we're going to read over the next 88 days in Matthew, that it can make a real impact in my real life? And I hope that you'll have some openness to that. So that'll do it for today. Again, tomorrow we'll get into chapter 2. Not tomorrow, I keep saying that. Day 4, we'll get into chapter 2. Read that, and we'll talk about that then. God bless you, friends, and I'll see you next time.